Detach to attract is one of the most misunderstood principles when it comes to relationships, yet it is the most powerful force in reclaiming your sense of value and creating the space where another person begins to realize what they lost. After a breakup, the natural human instinct is to hold on, to chase, to call, to text, to explain, and to convince. It comes from fear, fear of losing someone permanently, fear of being forgotten, fear of being replaced. But fear is repellent, not magnetic. The more you try to grasp tightly to something that is slipping away, the faster it falls through your fingers. True attraction is not born out of holding on, it is born out of release. The paradox is this: the moment you stop needing someone to return, that is when the possibility of them longing for you begins. Detachment does not mean you stop caring, it means you release the grip of desperation and allow space for the natural pull of curiosity to awaken in them. When you detach, you shift the energy dynamic completely. Think of relationships like a scale. When one side is heavy with neediness and pursuit, the other side naturally lifts away. When both sides are balanced, there is harmony. But the moment you let go, the moment you step back, you tilt the balance in your favor. Detachment sends a subconscious message: I have value without you. I am whole without you. I am not chasing, I am choosing. This creates intrigue. Human beings are wired to desire what seems less accessible. When you are constantly available, constantly seeking their attention, you become ordinary in their eyes. But when you step back, when you stop feeding the connection with constant reminders of your presence, your absence itself begins to speak louder than your presence ever could. Detachment also forces the other person to confront silence. Silence is powerful because it cannot be ignored. When you no longer initiate contact, when you no longer fill the air with explanations, their mind begins to wander. They begin to ask themselves questions. Why isn't she reaching out? Why has she stopped trying? Has she moved on? Has she found happiness without me? These unanswered questions create a vacuum, and the human mind cannot stand a vacuum. It will search for answers, and in that search, longing is born. Detachment makes them notice what they once overlooked, because absence has a way of magnifying presence. What was once taken for granted suddenly becomes precious in its lack. It is also essential to understand that detachment is not a strategy to manipulate, but a discipline that empowers you. It is about reclaiming your dignity and your energy. After a breakup, your mind wants to obsess, to replay every conversation, to predict outcomes, but that is wasted energy. By detaching, you redirect that energy inward. You begin to invest in yourself again, your growth, your appearance, your mindset, your goals. This shift creates a magnetic field around you because people are drawn to self-assurance, not desperation. When you detach, you step back into your own power, and it is this power that makes another person miss you. They do not miss the version of you that was begging and pleading. They miss the version of you that was radiant, confident, and self-contained. Detachment also creates respect. When you show that you are capable of walking away and still thriving, it sends a silent message of strength. Respect and attraction are deeply connected. Without respect, attraction fades. By detaching, you remind the other person that your life does not revolve around them, that you are capable of joy and fulfillment on your own terms. This often triggers a reevaluation in their mind. They begin to compare the emptiness of their current reality with the richness of the energy you once brought into their life. The space you create by detachment allows them to see clearly what they are missing, something they could never see when you were constantly present and available. Another dimension of detachment is psychological freedom. When you no longer cling, you free yourself from emotional chains. This freedom makes you more attractive because independence is compelling. People naturally admire those who are not enslaved by their emotions, those who can rise above pain and transform it into growth. When you embody this, the other person feels the difference. They sense the shift even without words. Your energy changes, your presence changes, your aura becomes untouchable. And this transformation plants a seed of curiosity and regret in their mind. They wonder why you are no longer under their control, why you seem stronger now, why you no longer revolve around them. This very wonder is the beginning of them missing you. Detachment also resets the power dynamic. In a breakup, the one who walks away often feels in control, while the one left behind feels powerless. But when you detach, you silently take back the control. You refuse to let their actions dictate your emotional state. You step out of the role of the pursuer and into the role of the chooser. This shift changes the narrative entirely. Suddenly, It is no longer about whether they will come back to you. It becomes about whether they are worthy of coming back into your life. This unspoken reversal is what makes them feel the absence more intensely. They miss not just your presence, but the version of themselves that felt validated by your attention. And when that validation is removed through detachment, they long for it again. Detach to attract is therefore not a trick. It is a truth rooted in human psychology. The moment you stop trying to control someone's perception of you, the moment you stop chasing approval, you regain your natural magnetism. Your worth does not need to be proven, it needs to be lived. And when you live it boldly, silently, confidently, the absence of your presence becomes the loudest message you could ever send. Silence speaks louder than words, and in the aftermath of a breakup, silence becomes one of the most powerful tools you can use. The natural urge is to talk, to explain, to defend your worth, to remind the other person of what they are losing. But the truth is that words often fall on deaf ears when emotions are high. When someone has made the decision to leave, no amount of pleading, reasoning, or persuading can shift their state of mind in that moment. Words can be twisted, ignored, or dismissed, but silence cannot be escaped. Silence is not just the absence of communication, it is the presence of strength. It forces the other person to feel the weight of your absence without you needing to spell it out. It is in the quiet moments when they expect to hear from you and don't, when they anticipate a message that never comes, that the realization of your value begins to rise inside of them. Silence is not weakness, it is controlled power. When you stop explaining yourself, you send a subtle message. You no longer need to justify your worth. Silence is dignity, and dignity creates curiosity. Every time you remain quiet, you leave room for their mind to fill in the blanks, and the human mind cannot resist filling voids. They start to wonder what you are thinking, what you are doing, whether you have moved on, whether you are happier without them. Silence provokes questions that words could never create. The absence of communication plants seeds of doubt in their mind, and those seeds grow with each passing day. What was once certainty in their decision becomes uncertainty. They begin to realize that your silence is not passive. It is active, deliberate, and commanding. There is also a psychological principle at play when it comes to silence. People value what they cannot easily access. When you are constantly talking, constantly updating, constantly present, there is no mystery. The human heart longs for mystery, for something just out of reach. Silence creates that aura of mystery. It makes them feel the contrast between when they had access to you and now when they no longer do. Every unanswered call, every message that is not sent, every day that goes by without your voice becomes a mirror reflecting back to them how much they miss the connection. Silence magnifies what words often fail to express because it forces the other person to sit alone with the emptiness of your absence. Silence also has the power to calm your own emotions and elevate your presence. In moments of silence, you reclaim your control. Instead of reacting impulsively, you create space for reflection, for healing, and for growth. This inner calm is noticeable even from a distance. People can sense when someone has moved from chaos to composure. That composure is attractive because it is rare. In a world where most people respond emotionally, the one who responds with calmness and silence stands out. It communicates emotional intelligence and self-respect. The very fact that you do not rush to fill the silence with words shows strength, and strength is always respected, even if unspoken. Another dimension of silence is how it shifts the dynamic of power in the relationship. The one who talks too much, who chases, who explains endlessly, is often the one who feels powerless. The one who remains silent holds the upper hand because they are no longer feeding the cycle of neediness. Silence makes the other person lean in. It is like standing in a crowded room and suddenly turning off all the noise. Everyone looks up curious, wondering what will happen next. Your silence becomes the magnet that draws their attention back because people cannot ignore what they cannot control. When you refuse to feed them with constant reassurance or emotional outbursts, they are left alone with their own thoughts, and those thoughts often lead them back to memories of you. Silence is not about punishing the other person. It is about respecting yourself enough to stop chasing what does not value you. It is about understanding that your worth does not require a constant explanation. By embracing silence, you teach others how to treat you. You communicate that your presence is a privilege, not something to be taken lightly. And as they begin to realize that your attention is no longer guaranteed, they feel the loss more deeply. The silence forces them to confront the emptiness they tried to ignore. They may not admit it outwardly, but internally, the quiet weighs on them. It is in the silence that regret often begins to grow, because silence strips away all the distractions and confronts the heart with truth. There is also a healing quality in silence for yourself. When you choose silence instead of arguments or endless conversations, you create space for your own inner voice. You begin to hear yourself again, your desires, your vision, your goals. You detach from the noise of their opinions and reconnect with the clarity of your own. And as you grow stronger in your silence, the shift is felt on the other side. People notice when your energy changes, when your spirit is no longer tangled in chaos. This transformation makes them miss the version of you that once poured so much into them, because now they see what life feels like without that energy. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but in truth, it is one of the most assertive statements you can make. It says, without words, that you are in control of yourself, that you refuse to engage in drama, that you have elevated your worth. It places the weight of responsibility on the other person to recognize what they lost, rather than on you to prove what you are worth. And in that reversal, the power of silence becomes undeniable. Focus on self-mastery is the most powerful response after a breakup, because it shifts the attention from what you lost to what you can build. When you go through heartbreak, the natural tendency is to pour all of your energy into the other person, into analyzing their behavior, into asking why they left, into wondering if they are thinking about you, but that cycle drains you. The truth is, the greatest way to make someone miss you is not through words, not through games, not through chasing, but by elevating yourself to a level where your presence is undeniable. Self-mastery is about reclaiming the power that was once scattered in emotional chaos and channeling it back into yourself. It is about becoming the version of yourself that is so focused, so strong, and so vibrant that your absence becomes impossible to ignore. When you focus on self-mastery, you begin by turning your pain into fuel. Every breakup carries with it a surge of energy, and you have a choice. You can waste it on chasing someone who no longer values you, or you can redirect it into building yourself into someone who commands attention without even trying. Self-mastery is not about proving anything to them. It is about proving to yourself that you are capable of growth beyond heartbreak. It means training your mind to stop spiraling in negativity and instead committing to habits that lift you higher. You shift your focus from obsession over the past to discipline in the present. This very shift creates a transformation so visible that others cannot help but notice it. The process of self-mastery begins with controlling your thoughts. The mind after a breakup tends to obsess and replay memories, but mastery requires discipline. You catch the thought before it controls you. You replace, why did this happen to me? With, what can I learn from this? Will he come back? With, how can I become stronger than I was yesterday? This shift in mindset is powerful, because when you master your thoughts, you master your emotions, and when you master your emotions, you master your actions. Emotional control is the foundation of self-mastery. When others expect you to crumble and instead you rise with grace, the impact is unforgettable. It sends a message not only to them, but to yourself, that you are not defined by rejection, but by resilience. Beyond mindset, self-mastery demands discipline and action. This is the time to build your body, your career, your skills, your passions. Every hour spent dwelling on the past is an hour stolen from your future, but every hour invested in growth compounds into a stronger, more attractive you. When you work on your health, your appearance changes, your energy improves, your confidence shines. When you focus on your purpose, you create momentum that makes you magnetic. People are drawn to those who are moving forward with clarity and vision. Self-mastery means refusing to stagnate in sorrow and choosing to evolve through it. This evolution makes your presence felt even in your absence, because growth cannot be hidden. They will notice the glow in your skin, the strength in your posture, the fire in your eyes, and they will remember what it felt like to be near that energy. Another aspect of self-mastery is mastering your time and environment. After a breakup, many waste endless hours stalking social media, comparing themselves and living in mental prisons. But those who focus on self-mastery use that time to read, to learn, to create, to build. They surround themselves with people who uplift them, with environments that inspire them, with routines that discipline them. This builds an aura that is difficult to forget. Human beings are wired to miss what brings them peace. inspiration, and excitement. By elevating your energy through self-mastery, you naturally position yourself as someone whose absence is deeply felt. They may not admit it immediately, but they will sense the difference when your focus is no longer them, but your own evolution. Self-mastery also creates independence, and independence is attractive because it is rare. When you show that you are capable of thriving without anyone's validation, you embody freedom. That freedom is magnetic because most people are controlled by their emotions, by their need for attention, by their desire to be wanted. But when you rise above that, you stand out. The person who left begins to question their decision, not because you begged them to, but because they see you shining in places where they expected you to be broken. They miss not the desperate version of you, but the empowered version of you who no longer depends on them for identity. And that version becomes unforgettable because it represents strength that few possess. Self-mastery is also about emotional detachment from the outcome. You are no longer focused on whether they come back or not. Your focus is on becoming the best version of yourself regardless of the outcome. This detachment creates a paradox. The less you need them, the more they begin to need you. The less you chase, the more they wonder about you. The less you revolve around their world, the more they begin to revolve around the memory of yours. This happens because true attraction is rooted in respect and admiration, and respect only grows when you respect yourself enough to evolve. By mastering yourself, you set a standard that others are forced to recognize, even if they once ignored it. The beauty of self-mastery is that it outlasts the pain of heartbreak. While chasing someone might temporarily soothe your fears, it diminishes your value. But focusing on self-mastery builds a foundation that no one can take away. It creates a strength that lingers in their mind long after words are forgotten. They will remember how you carried yourself, how you refused to break, how you grew stronger in silence. That memory will echo louder than any conversation, because nothing is more haunting than realizing the person you left behind became someone greater without you. And that realization is what makes them miss you in ways they never expected. Scarcity creates value, and this principle holds true not only in economics, but in relationships as well. When something is abundant, easily available, and constantly within reach, it is often taken for granted. But the moment it becomes rare, the moment it is withdrawn, its value multiplies in the eyes of the one who no longer has access to it. After a breakup, most people make the mistake of flooding their ex with attention, calls, texts, and reminders of their presence. This abundance of availability makes the other person feel secure that you will always be there no matter what they do. It lowers your perceived value because they sense no risk of losing you. But when you pull back, when you remove your presence, when you no longer make yourself easy to access, suddenly the dynamics shift. Scarcity awakens appreciation, and appreciation often turns into longing. Human nature is drawn to what is not easily obtained. We chase after the rare, the difficult, the mysterious, because it signals worth. Think about the way people treat luxury items. A diamond has value not because it is useful, but because it is scarce. A limited edition product commands attention not because it is better, but because few can have it. The same principle applies to you. When you are constantly showing up, constantly giving, constantly proving yourself, you become like air. Necessary but invisible. When you step back, when you stop feeding the connection, when you no longer pour your energy into someone who walked away, you shift from ordinary to rare. And in that shift, they begin to see you differently. Your absence forces them to confront how much they relied on your presence. Scarcity also creates contrast. While you were present, they may not have noticed the little things you did, the care, the attention, the consistency, because it was always there. But the moment it is gone, the contrast is stark. Suddenly, the good morning texts are missing, the warm conversations are absent, the emotional support they once leaned on is no longer available. That absence creates a void, and the human heart naturally longs to fill voids. Scarcity highlights what was once overlooked, because only when something is gone do we fully realize its impact. By creating scarcity, you allow them to experience life without your presence, and that life often feels emptier than they expected. There is also a psychological trigger that scarcity activates fear of loss. People do not value what they think they cannot lose, but they quickly reevaluate when they realize it is slipping away. When you step back after a breakup, when you stop reaching out, you awaken this fear. They begin to wonder if you are moving on, if you are building a new life without them. if they are being replaced. That fear of loss makes them miss you more than words ever could. It forces them to confront the possibility that what they once had access to may no longer be theirs. This urgency makes your value rise in their mind because what is rare is desired and what is desired is missed. Scarcity also creates self-respect. By refusing to make yourself constantly available, you send a silent message that your time and energy are precious. You communicate that you are not someone who can be taken for granted. This not only makes the other person view you differently, but it also changes how you view yourself. You begin to treat yourself as valuable, and that energy radiates outward. Others sense when you hold yourself in high regard. That respect for yourself becomes magnetic, and the person who left begins to notice the difference. They may not admit it, but your withdrawal makes them feel the weight of your absence, because they realize that they no longer have the same access to you that they once did. Another aspect of scarcity is unpredictability. When you stop being predictable, you create curiosity. Before, they may have known that you would always respond, always call, always be available. But now, with your silence, with your distance, with your focus on yourself, you become unpredictable. This unpredictability makes you intriguing because mystery draws people in. They start to wonder what you are doing, who you are with, how you are feeling. That wondering is the beginning of missing. Scarcity plants questions in their mind, and those questions echo in their thoughts long after the relationship has ended. Scarcity also teaches the other person the consequences of their decisions. When you step back, you are not punishing them. You are simply allowing them to experience the reality of life without you. It is easy for someone to think they can walk away and still keep the benefits of your presence, but scarcity removes that illusion. It creates a boundary that says, if you no longer choose me, you no longer have access to me. This boundary builds respect and makes them reconsider what they gave up. It forces them to feel the absence rather than being shielded from it by your continued availability. In relationships, value is not determined by how much you give, but by how much you are missed when you are no longer giving. Scarcity is what creates that longing. By pulling back, by focusing on yourself, by refusing to chase, you become the rare diamond in a world full of stones. Your absence becomes a presence in their mind because the human heart always craves what it cannot easily have. And as they sit with the silence, with the mystery, with the emptiness of your absence, the realization of your value grows stronger with every passing day. Emotional control is power, and after a breakup, it becomes the dividing line between those who spiral into desperation and those who rise into dignity. The natural instinct when you feel rejected is to react, send long messages explaining your side, beg for another chance, cry in front of them, or show anger in hopes of forcing them to see your worth. But these emotional outbursts do the opposite of what you want. Instead of drawing them back, they push them further away because desperation weakens your presence. People are drawn to composure, not chaos. Emotional control is the silent message that says, I value myself enough not to let anyone else dictate how I respond. When you control your emotions, you control the outcome because you shift from being predictable and reactive to being grounded and steadiness creates respect. When someone expects you to react and you don't, it unsettles them. They expect tears, they expect begging, they expect anger, but when instead you respond with calmness, it forces them to rethink the situation. Silence, a composed tone, a graceful exit, these are powerful responses that linger in their mind longer than any outburst could. Emotional control is not about suppressing your feelings. It is about mastering them so that they no longer master you. Feelings are natural, but when you learn to channel them, instead of letting them explode uncontrollably, you show strength. This strength makes them see you differently because true attraction is tied to respect, and respect is only given to those who demonstrate control over themselves. After a breakup, every move you make either adds to or subtracts from your value in the other person's eyes. When you lash out or chase, you communicate that your emotions are dependent on their presence, and that dependency lowers your worth. But when you remain calm, when you don't let their absence shake your center, you show independence. Independence is magnetic because it communicates that you are not enslaved by anyone else's choices. Emotional control makes them realize you are not the person they can manipulate or predict. This unpredictability draws them back in because curiosity is sparked when someone does not act the way you expect. Emotional control also protects your dignity. Heartbreak tempts you to act in ways you will regret later, sending desperate late night texts, posting things on social media to get their attention, begging mutual friends to intervene. All of these actions might feel relieving in the moment, but they damage how you are perceived. Each display of desperation makes you appear less valuable. But when you hold back, when you resist the urge to act out of emotion, you preserve your dignity. That dignity becomes memorable. Long after the breakup, they may not remember every conversation, but they will remember the grace with which you carried yourself. And that memory carries more weight than any emotional plea could ever hold. Another layer of emotional control is how it impacts your healing. When you allow your emotions to rule you, you stay stuck in cycles of pain, replaying the breakup in your mind, dwelling on what they did, obsessing over where they are. This keeps you trapped in the past. But when you take control, when you refuse to feed negative emotions, you open space for healing. You allow yourself to process pain without letting it define you. You choose discipline over impulse, and that discipline strengthens you. Healing accelerates when emotions no longer run wild. This inner strength radiates outward, and it is felt by others, including the one who left. They will sense that you are not drowning, but rising, and that very realization makes them feel the absence of your presence even more. Emotional control is also tied to timing. There are moments after a breakup when silence is louder than speaking, when walking away is stronger than arguing, when a calm smile is more unsettling than a flood of tears. Mastering when to speak, when to remain silent, and when to simply withdraw is the art of emotional intelligence. This mastery keeps them guessing. They no longer feel they have full control over you, and that lack of control makes them uneasy. People tend to chase what they cannot fully hold, and emotional control makes you untouchable because it removes their ability to dictate your reactions. There is also a magnetic quality in calm energy. Think about how rare it is to meet someone who does not crumble under pressure, who does not lose themselves in storms. Calmness has an aura of authority, and authority commands attention. When you carry yourself with composure after a breakup, you radiate this aura. Even if they left, they cannot ignore the strength you display. It makes them question if they underestimated you, if they misjudged your value, if they walked away from someone who is stronger than they realized. Those questions create doubt in their mind, and doubt often grows into regret. Mastering your emotions also means mastering how you express yourself. Instead of impulsive messages, you communicate with clarity when necessary. Instead of angry posts online, you maintain silence and privacy. Instead of showing desperation, you invest your energy in growth. Each of these actions communicates a higher level of control. And in relationships, control is respect. The one who controls themselves always holds the greater influence because they are not swayed by external circumstances. By demonstrating this, you shift the balance of power back to yourself, making your absence heavier in their mind. Emotional control does not mean you do not feel pain. It means you refuse to let pain dictate your worth. It means you cry in private if you must, but you show up in public with strength. It means you acknowledge your emotions, but you choose not to let them rule your decisions. This choice elevates you. It makes you stand apart from the many who break down after rejection. And it is this elevation, this composure, this quiet strength that lingers in the other person's mind. Because nothing is more haunting than realizing that someone you expected to crumble instead stood tall, dignified, and unshaken. When you finally decide to walk away, the greatest test begins. Not from the other person, but from within yourself. It's not the leaving that's the hardest, it's the staying gone. It's the discipline of not checking their social media, not rereading old conversations, not letting your mind wander back to the highlight reel of the good moments that once made you feel alive. This is where most people fall into the trap because the heart has a way of romanticizing what broke it. Your mind will replay the laughs, the touches, the late night talks, but it conveniently edits out the disrespect, the neglect, the constant questioning of your worth. And if you're not careful, nostalgia will seduce you back into the very cycle you fought so hard to escape. The discipline of walking away is not about strength in the moment. It's about consistency after the decision has been made. You have to train your emotions to follow your decision, because if your decision waits for your emotions, you'll never move forward. Emotions crave comfort, even if that comfort is toxic, while your decision seeks freedom. This is why most people end up repeating lessons they should have learned already. They confuse missing someone with needing them. But missing someone is just a symptom of having been attached, not evidence that they belong in your future. The discipline of walking away also forces you to master silence. Not everything requires an explanation. Not everyone deserves closure. And not all situations will give you a perfect goodbye. Sometimes you have to accept that walking away without a dramatic ending is the most powerful closure you'll ever get. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you value your peace more than proving your point. It means you've outgrown the need to be understood by someone who never cared to understand you in the first place. The discipline here is to resist the temptation of reaching out one more time, of sending that long message, of trying to fix something that was never meant to last. Every time you resist, you're not just walking away from them. You're walking towards your highest self. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming, and walking away without turning back is the hardest bridge to cross, because on that bridge there are no cheering crowds, no applause, no instant relief. It's just you, your thoughts, and the pull of the past trying to drag you back. But that's also where growth is born, in the silence, in the restraint, in the unseen battles you win when no one is watching. Another part of the discipline of walking away is learning to sit with the emptiness instead of rushing to fill it. People who lack discipline jump from one distraction to another, trying to avoid feeling lonely. They run to new relationships, meaningless connections, constant activity, anything that will silence the ache of absence. But the truth is, if you don't discipline yourself to face the emptiness, you'll only recycle the same pain in different forms. The emptiness is not your enemy. It's the space where healing takes root. It's in that void where you discover who you are without their presence, what you like without their influence, and what you need without their approval. Discipline says don't run from the silence, embrace it, because silence sharpens your vision. It teaches you to see the difference between desire and destiny, between longing and alignment. Discipline also means guarding your boundaries even after you've walked away. Just because they reach out doesn't mean you need to respond. Just because they suddenly notice your absence doesn't mean they deserve your presence again. You must remind yourself that curiosity from their side doesn't equal commitment, and interest doesn't equal investment. People often come back when they feel your energy shifting away, not because they love you, but because they love the control they had over you. The discipline here is to recognize that difference and hold your ground. This is why self-control is one of the purest forms of strength. Not everyone can say no to what their heart still remembers, but those who do unlock a new level of freedom that can never be taken away. Walking away with discipline also transforms your identity. You start realizing you don't need to chase validation or beg for attention, because the act of walking away was the loudest declaration of self-worth you could ever make. Every step away from what doesn't value you is a step into the life you were meant to live. But this only works if you maintain discipline, because the old cycle will always call you back in moments of weakness. And in those moments, you must remember discipline is not about denying your feelings. It's about choosing not to be ruled by them. It's about letting your mind lead your heart and letting your principles outweigh your impulses. This is what separates those who keep repeating toxic cycles from those who break free and never look back.